Alrighty, hello everyone. Chief Weather Forecaster Beckett Webb here. Thank you so much here for tuning in. Let's get started with today's weather headlines. Warm temperatures continue, showers return late week, and massive temperature cool down returns early next week. Today is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, and today's edition of Weather Watch starts now. Alrighty, hello everyone. Chief Weather Forecaster Becky Webb here. Thank you so much here for tuning in. Happy Tuesday. Let's go and get started with today's hourly weather forecast here. Temperatures will be a little bit cooler than yesterday's. We're going out the door, out to school, out to work. Temperatures will be in the mid 30s there with cloudy conditions. Mid 50s by 11 a.m., lower to mid 60s 2 through 4 p.m., increasing cloudiness before we drop into the lower 50s again tonight, into the overnight hours again tonight again. Lows in the lower to mid 30s. Now looking at the overall forecast here, 66 in Asheville with mostly sunny skies, 64 in Greenville Spartanburg with mostly sunny skies, Charlotte sitting at 64 degrees and mostly sunny, 66 in Dakota with mostly sunny skies, and Gatlinburg at 67 degrees with increasing cloudiness. Now looking at yesterday's almanac for February 16th, yesterday's high was 66, it was warm. The low was 44, average high is about 53 degrees, average low is about 31, record high is about 77 degrees, so we were relatively close to that record high. Record low is 2. We saw about 0.01 inches of precipitation yesterday, which bring that monthly total at 0.65 inches, yearly total at 4.57 inches. Sunrise is 7:15 a.m. and sunset is at 6:13 p.m. Now looking at the observed precipitation from last weekend, this is the total precipitation we saw. Much of upstate South Carolina to the North Carolina Piedmont received a lot of heavy rainfall. About 1 to 2 inches fell, especially just east of Greenville Spartanburg. You can see north of Columbia also got about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall last weekend as well towards Charlotte. But through much of the mountains, we saw about a trace to maybe very close to an inch of rainfall accumulation in much of the East Tennessee region. So out of all, the most that we saw was heavy rainfall towards the South Carolina upstate. But again, after that, we're going to remain relatively dry. Maximum wind gusts through the next couple of days will be relatively for today and tomorrow. My mistake. Will be relatively strong, around 20 to 30 miles per hour through much of the mountains into the South Carolina upstate. So watch out for some breezy conditions. 30 to 35 miles per hour possible towards the South Carolina upstate and central portion of South Carolina, as well as parts of the East Tennessee region. So definitely want to be prepared for some windy conditions. Now let's go ahead and talk about today's forecast here through much of the mountains of the Carolinas, because it's going to remain relatively nice today, and if you want to go hiking or anything like that, we can give you that latest extra detail here of the forecast, and that's what we're doing here. Tula Gorge at 65 degrees, Lake Burton at 63, Raven Bald at 53, Chattahoochee Gorge at 59, Lake Jocassee 64, Table Rock at 55, Lake Toxaway at 57, 59 in Lake Glenville, 66 in Franklin, and 53 in Weyerald with north winds around 4 to 8 miles per hour, shifting towards the southeastern Blue Ridge Mountains. Black Balsam at 53, Lake Glenville at 59, DuPont at 60, Table Rock at 55, Hendersonville at 62, Silva at 67. So relatively nice temperatures. Again, some cloudy conditions still remain. So if you're wanting to go to the higher peaks or ridge tops of the mountains, just watch out for maybe a few clouds or two. And temperatures, again, will remain relatively nice. Now for the French Broad Valley and vicinity, Mount Pisgah at 54, Bryson City at 68, Newfound Gap at 55, Big Creek at 64, Max Patch, there it is, at 59, Marshall at 67, Mount Mitchell at 50, Bearwaller Mountain at 53, Lake Lure at 67, and Asheville City at 65 degrees. Now looking at the northern mountains here, Mount Mitchell at 50, Burnsville at 62, Roan Mountain at 54, Lindenville Falls at 56, Wilson Creek at 63, Sam's Gap at also 57 degrees. So relatively nice through much of the western North Carolina mountains today, much of the Carolina mountains for that matter. So if you do want to do any sort of hiking today and much of this week, actually, it's a great time to do it. Now looking at the overall forecast temperatures through much of the forecast region, 65 in Asheville, 65 in Greenville, Spartanburg, Columbia at 69, 64 in Charlotte, 62 in Hickory, 67 in Gatlinburg, and 66 in Knoxville. Tonight's minimum temperatures here, it'll be a little bit cold, not going to reach below freezing there. 35 in Asheville, 38 in Greenville-Spartanburg, Columbia at 36, 38 in Charlotte, 35 in Hickory, 39 in Knoxville, 40 in Gatlinburg, 37 in Andrews, and 40 in Dakota. Now looking at tomorrow's high temperatures, relatively nice, relatively warm. Low 70s through the central portion of South Carolina, 68 in Asheville, 67 in Greenwood-Spartanburg, Greenwood at 69, 73 in Columbia, 68 in Charlotte, 67 in Hickory, 65 in Knoxville, 66 in Gatlinburg, 64 in Andrews, and Athens sitting at 69 degrees. Looking at the overall 7-day outlook here, Tuesday and Wednesday, dry conditions in the mid to upper 60s, warming into the lower to mid 70s Thursday and Friday. Isolated thunderstorms remain possible on Friday, so definitely want to watch out for that before temperatures cool down into early next week. We could see lower 60s on Saturday with scattered showers, lower 50s on Sunday, then we drop again into the mid 40s for highs on Monday, with lows in the upper 40s, warming into the mid 50s for lows before dropping into the mid 30s and upper 20s into the early start of next week. So definitely want to enjoy much of this week before we see that massive temperature change early next week into those mid 40s. All right, everyone, I'm Chief Weather Forecaster Beckett Webb here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll leave you with the latest updated Howland weather 7-day outlook. Thank you for tuning in.